Only 18% of Americans know how to drive a manual transmission. That number drops even lower among younger drivers. Yet there's a subset of people who don't just know how to drive stick, they refuse to drive anything else. These aren't people stuck with old cars. They're actively choosing manual transmissions in a world that's moved on. What's happening in their minds that makes this choice feel not just preferable, but essential? The answer reveals something fascinating about human psychology and our relationship with control, identity, and engagement. Manual transmission drivers aren't simply holding on to outdated technology. They're satisfying psychological needs that automatic transmissions can't touch. Let's start with the most obvious element: control. When you drive a manual, you decide exactly when the car shifts, how much power transfers from engine to wheels, what gear you're in at any given moment. No computer makes these decisions for you. This isn't abstract. It's tangible authority over a machine that most people experience passively. Why does this matter so much to certain individuals? Research shows that perceived control over our environment significantly impacts mental well-being and life satisfaction. In modern life, most people feel minimal control over their jobs, their commutes, their schedules. But slide into a car with 3 pedals, and suddenly you're making every decision. You're reading the road, listening to the engine, responding with precision. That feedback loop between driver and machine creates a sense of agency that extends beyond just getting from point A to point B. Here's where it gets interesting. Manual drivers describe their experience as a conversation with their vehicle. Every upshift requires intention. Every downshift demands timing. You're not operating the car, you're partnering with it. Automatic transmission users simply press the accelerator and the car figures out the rest. Manual drivers are actively participating in every moment of motion. This participation operates on multiple sensory levels. There's the tactile element of the gear shift in your palm, the resistance of the clutch under your foot, the vibration of the drivetrain through the chassis. These physical sensations create what psychologists call embodied cognition, where physical experiences shape our mental states. The act of shifting gears isn't just mechanical, it's deeply satisfying on a neurological level. But the psychology runs deeper than sensory pleasure. Manual transmission preference has become intertwined with identity formation. Learning to drive stick is now a badge of honor in enthusiast communities. It signals mechanical literacy, driving skill, dedication to craft. Only a small percentage of the population possesses this knowledge, which creates a sense of exclusivity. You're part of a specialized group that understands something most people don't. The cultural significance can't be ignored either. Manual transmissions symbolize rebellion against over-automation. We live in an era where technology increasingly makes decisions for us. Our phones predict our words. Our homes adjust temperature automatically. Our cars can practically drive themselves. Manual transmission drivers are pushing back against this trend. They're saying that human involvement still matters, that the connection between person and machine shouldn't be severed in the name of convenience. This becomes particularly relevant when you examine who's choosing manuals today. Something unexpected is happening. More than half the buyers of the manual Acura Integra are younger than 46. A quarter of manual Miata owners are under 35. Millennials and Gen Z drivers are discovering stick shifts not out of necessity, but for enjoyment. Why would younger generations, raised entirely in the age of automation, suddenly gravitate toward a technology their parents abandoned? The answer lies in what they're searching for, something we haven't fully explored yet. Younger drivers are searching for something genuine in a world saturated with artificial experiences. They grew up with smartphones that curate reality through algorithms, social media feeds that present carefully filtered versions of life, video games that simulate achievement without real consequence. When they discover manual transmissions, they're encountering something refreshingly authentic. The car doesn't lie. Stall it, and everyone knows you messed up. Execute a perfect heel-toe downshift, and you actually accomplish something tangible. This craving for authenticity explains why manual transmission communities are thriving online. Forums dedicated to stick shifts aren't just technical resources. They're gathering places for people who value skill acquisition and mechanical understanding. These communities create social bonds around shared knowledge. Someone posts about finally mastering rev matching. Others celebrate because they remember that exact moment in their own journey. This collective experience builds identity beyond individual preference. There's also the mastery element. Cognitive psychology research shows that humans derive deep satisfaction from developing competence in challenging skills. Manual transmission driving provides this in perfect doses. The learning curve is steep enough to feel meaningful, but achievable enough to avoid frustration. Those first few weeks of jerky starts and missed shifts transform into smooth, intuitive operation. The brain's reward centers activate powerfully when we progress from incompetence to mastery. But here's what makes manual drivers psychologically distinct. They actively choose difficulty. Every morning they could make their commute easier by driving automatic. They don't. This reveals something about their core values. They prioritize engagement over convenience, skill over simplicity, participation over passivity. These aren't just preferences about cars. They're philosophical stances about how to live. The forced attention creates unexpected benefits. You can't text while driving manual. Your phone sits ignored because both hands stay busy. Parents recognize this. Many insist their teenagers learn stick specifically because it reduces distracted driving. The constant cognitive demand keeps the mind anchored in the present moment. You're reading traffic patterns, anticipating when you'll need third gear, listening to engine RPM. This sustained focus produces a meditative state where worries fade and only the drive exists. Manual transmissions also connect people to automotive heritage. Every shift links the driver to decades of motoring history. Before computers managed everything, before electric vehicles eliminated transmissions entirely, this is how everyone drove. There's nostalgia embedded in the experience, but it's more than sentimentality. It's participating in a tradition that's rapidly disappearing. Younger enthusiasts sense they might be the final generation with access to this experience, which makes it feel precious rather than outdated. The preservation movement reflects this urgency. Organizations dedicated to saving manual transmissions aren't just hobbyist groups. They represent philosophical resistance to the complete automation of human experience. Every manual car that survives becomes a statement that not everything should be optimized for effortless operation. Some things should remain challenging, engaging, human. What separates manual-only drivers from everyone else ultimately comes down to how they view the relationship between humans and machines. They reject the idea that technology should eliminate human involvement. They want partnership, not replacement. That third pedal isn't an inconvenience to tolerate. It's an invitation to participate. When you understand this, you understand why no amount of logic or efficiency arguments will convince them to switch. They're not choosing the objectively better option. They're choosing the option that makes them feel most alive behind the wheel. That's not about transportation anymore. That's about identity, philosophy, and what it means to truly drive rather than simply be driven. These drivers understand something the rest of us are still learning. In a world racing toward complete automation, they've identified what gets lost in the pursuit of convenience. The tactile feedback of a gear lever, the cognitive engagement of reading an engine, the satisfaction of executing a skill that most people will never possess. They're not clinging to the past. They're protecting something essential about human experience. Next time you see someone rowing through gears in traffic, recognize what you're witnessing. Someone who chose difficulty because easy felt empty.